Okay, so our next class within Platyhelminthes, the phylum, is Cestota. These are your tapeworms. I'm going to draw you the life cycle of Taenia sagittata, which is the beef tapeworm. Well, I've already drawn it for you, but we're going to go through what it is. So, in the intestine of a human, we've got the anterior region, which is called a scolex. And that scolex has all these kinds of hooks and suckers that attach it to the wall of the intestine of whoever has this particular tapeworm. And a scolex, even though it's at the anterior end, it is not a head. It doesn't have sensory organs like a head should, nor does it really direct development. Doesn't have a central nervous system or anything like that. But the scolex produces units called proglottids through a process called strobilization, just like we saw in the scyphistema of the moon jelly, Aurelia aurita. So when the proglottids are first produced, they're immature. And as we get further and further away from the scolex, we can see they become more and more mature until they become gravid. And we know gravid is a term that means full of eggs. So basically these proglottids are pretty much nothing but a whole bunch of gamete producing machines. They just produce tons and tons and tons of gametes. A mature tapeworm doesn't even have a digestive tract. It just absorbs nutrients from its environment. Its habitat is an intestine, for crying out loud. So it does have these tiny little things called microtrichs along the edges of the proglottids that help with food absorption. And they're really along all of the proglottids. I was just too lazy to draw them all in. Okay, so these proglottids can detach and they can be passed out of the human in fecal matter. And then if people fertilize their pastures with human manure, these eggs and the gravid proglottids will end up in a cow that eats the grass, because these proglottids will wiggle up to the tips of the grass away from the soil, because they have positive phototaxis. They will climb up, and a cow will eat them. And the eggs will hatch inside the cow's stomach, and they'll form what's called an oncosphere larva. And that larva is going to pass into the intestine of the cow, and it's going to get out of the cow's stomach into the intestines, and then burrow through the wall of the stomach into the muscle. And once that cow is dead, we call that muscle meat. And when it's in the muscle, it forms what's called a cysticercus, or a bladder worm. And a bladder worm kind of looks a little something like this. And it's much smaller than that, but that's what a USDA agent is looking for in the meat when they're trying to make sure that it is safe for us to eat and not full of things that will give us tapeworms. So those bladder worms in the muscle can be eaten by a person if it's undercooked. The cysticercus isn't killed, it can evert, and it'll turn inside out. And look at that, how that cysticercus looks just like a scolex after it's everted, because that's exactly what it is. And when it gets into the intestine of another human being, it's going to start strobilizing and forming a new tapeworm. So there you go. There's your tapeworm life cycle.